Okay, I'd like to kind of get us started on this last part. And I appreciate everybody who moved from the front of the room to the back of the room. Normally, we make the opposite request. But since most of you were in the back of the room, and I also felt as though standing up on the stage created a significant amount of distance at this point. So first, I want to again thank the organizing committee and everybody who did all the logistics for the symposium. As we all know, these things take a tremendous amount of work, and really want to thank them. So I think a round of applause for the committee and everyone. Second, I want to thank all of you. I know some of you were here all day, some of you sort of came and went. But the conversations at the tables that I participated in were extremely rich, and looking at everything on the walls, very, very rich. So my job is to try to synthesize what we heard today. It'll be more like what I heard today. And I would also then appreciate, I'll give a little opportunity to do a reality check when I'm done to get a sense as to whether what I heard was what you heard. And I have notes that I've been taking throughout the day. A lot of great questions were generated, some solutions, and a lot of what ifs. So the first thing you're going to do is I want you all to think about a thing that you learned today that will change the way you teach or go about doing your work. And I want you to write it down. I'm not going to collect them, but write down something that you learned today that will change the way you teach or go about doing your work. And put your head down on your desk when you're done. So the reason I asked you to write something is that we think about things, but when we have to actually put our thoughts to paper, we think about them a little bit differently. But part of the reason for bringing everybody together, as we mentioned in the very beginning, was that you learn from one another, and that as you leave this symposium, you leave with an understanding that there are some things that you might do differently. And another question I have for you, and then I want to get to the synopsis, is what did you learn about yourself today? I know at a number of tables that I participated in, people learned a lot about themselves. And at times we do not take that reflective look. Some of you know that at the end of each week, I've mentioned this to a number of folks over the past couple of years. At the end of each week, I do a behavioral audit. It's a list of 20 some odd questions that I got out of a book that I read on leadership and department chairs and deans. And it's really interesting to actually go through that behavioral audit, because some weeks there's some questions I just skip because I don't like the answer that I'm going to give myself as to whether or not I did something effectively. But I do think it's worth us thinking about what did we learn about ourselves when we have these kinds of joint experiences. So now what I want to do is do the synthesis, and I decided to do it, organized it into 4 categories, not the 4 panels, but 4 categories. 30,000 feet, 10,000 feet, on the ground, and below the surface. And I hadn't planned on that until after hearing a couple of the panels this morning and hearing the keynote that Kevin Riley did. But for me, it made sense to stratify the things we heard because they were at different levels. So I'm just going to read the bulleted items I have. And again, it would be great to know whether or not what I heard is what you heard. So at the 30,000-foot level, I heard concerns that our curriculum is compartmentalized. And that, in fact, in order to deal with the issues that we deal with in today's society, that they can't be solved by just one discipline. I also heard that there are real differences in the way we look at globalization, social justice, and power differences, and questions about what is our role in helping people understand what those are and the different perspectives that people bring. At the 30,000-foot level, also heard a lot of conversation about how do you change large organizations? How does change actually happen? I heard a lot about acknowledgement of our responsibilities, that we need to have a sense of purpose, that we need to take care of and support the whole student, not just that piece that happens to be in our class for that 50 minutes or hour and a half. At the 30,000-foot level, heard a lot about sort of making education a public good, who has access, and then a bunch of questions about learning and teaching, and what are those. So they were sort of big question issues. In other words, what is it that we as an institution or as an organization, what are the big things we need to be thinking about? Compartmentalizing our curriculum or non-compartmentalizing our curriculum? How do we be interdisciplinary? How do we think about what we teach? How do issues of globalization, social justice, and power differences play in all of this? How does a big organization change? What's our responsibility and sense of purpose, and how do we take care of our students? At the 10,000-foot level, what I heard was, and this deals with the compartmentalization but gets lower, what I heard were questions about, do structured pathways which focus on content make learning too rigid for our students? And how do we then translate this focus on content that we feel that we need to teach in a 10-week quarter? How do we make sure that it doesn't create such a rigid environment for our students? How do we as faculty translate concepts into concrete pedagogy? So, gee, it makes sense we should teach this in our class, or we should teach this way. How do we actually do it? I also heard at the 10,000-foot level, how do we make students our partners in the learning environment? And how do we have our scholarship inform our thinking in high-impact learning, but be careful not to be too didactic in discussing issues in class? So we know about issues. Let's take an example around race and equity. We know about issues, we can teach them, but oftentimes we might find ourselves teaching them in a very clinical kind of manner, which to our students doesn't resonate in the way that we had intended it to. At the 10,000-foot level, how do we make this fun and creative? And both fun and creative for our students, but fun and creative for us. And then recognizing the struggles that our students face. So those are the things that I heard at 10,000 feet. On the ground, what I heard was, is there time in a single class to get breadth and depth? Back to this notion of compartmentalization, which sort of ran through a number of things. We do a good job at our vertical knowledge, building upon courses within a discipline, but maybe we can do a better job at horizontally connecting the kinds of experiences that students have. I heard on the ground about the difficulty of having some conversations amongst ourselves and with our students and between our students. And how do we create a safe space in our classrooms for students to share experiences and speak out? And then also this notion of knowing who our students are. So those are the things 30,000 feet, 10,000 feet, and on the ground. I'm going to get to the below the surface in a minute. But in thinking about this question and the topic of the symposium, what does it mean to be educated in the 21st century? To me, these seemed like questions that we need to be dealing with and answering. So let me go to the below the surface. So below the surface, what are we not talking about? If we think about what does it mean to be educated in the 21st century, what are we not talking about? Who's not at the table when we have those conversations? Both today, in the future, in our classrooms. What's invisible? What is it that we don't know about our students or our colleagues? And the reason I raise that last one is that if we really think about what does it mean to be educated in the 21st century, we need to be able to have an understanding of who we all are and the differences that we all bring. So those were some of the takeaways. There's all kinds of solutions written around on these flip charts, which I think are great pieces of information that we can all use to improve the way we deliver the curriculum. We, by the way, will be taking all of this information, we'll transcribe it, and we'll put it on in a Google Doc. We won't post it on the website because the website is for the world to see, and it's not that there's anything here that the world can't see, but it's really kind of an internal document. I mean, we'll make sure all faculty and staff know it's available. But for right now, we'll put it on the Google Drive, and then the Faculty Senate will be able to decide how they want to take that information and form it into the kinds of conversations that have to happen. Let me talk about moving forward, and then I want to kind of just open it up a little bit. So as we move forward, I want us to keep in mind who was not in the room and what the conversations need to be. I want you to write down, oh, by the way, the good news, is you were here. The bad news is that you're now the messenger. So I want you to write down, again, a little writing task, one thing that you'll ask your department to do or talk about as a result of today. You can't come and spend a day here and then not share something with your colleagues. Well, I suppose you can. I guess I'm asking that you share something with your colleagues. So each of you that were here, either for the whole day or even part of the day, or if you know of colleagues that were here for part of the day and aren't here now, there's something you should take back from here. And it might be different for each one of you, but I do ask that you take something back. I do ask that what you do is take the conversations that we had today and see how they map onto our strategic plan, or where they don't map onto our strategic plan, and where we need to think about ways in which to make those changes. But our strategic plan, the president started out in the morning talking about the strategic plan. There are so many initiatives within that plan that speak to this question of what does it mean to be educated in the 21st century. And I think that there are lots of things that people are thinking about doing as a result of this symposium that can be linked directly to moving the university forward in the strategic plan. As we move forward, I also want people to think about the fact that change can't be mandated. It must be because we want to change. So we can sit here, spend the whole day talking about all these things, but there's not going to be someone who's going to say, and this is how we must change. It's because people are going to want to change. And it also then is a reminder that this is our work. It's not just one person's work. And I'm not trying to sort of abdicate my responsibility as provost, but this is the kind of thing that if we're going to think about what does it mean to be educated in the 21st century, think about what our curriculum looks like, what our environment is like in the classroom, those are things that we have to all do together. And then I know that Gina has plans to take the information that was generated today and work with the Faculty Senate Steering Committee on trying to decide how we have some thematic and topical discussions. And that'll be with the help of all of us, with many of you, with our Office of Academic Innovations, ways in which we can have these conversations and actually have them then turn into actions and have some impact. So my takeaways from today are that there's great complexity in this work. I mean, you look at the various things that are written around the room, incredible complexity in this work. No simple solution to what does it mean to be educated in the 21st century, but certainly a lot of information that you've generated that I believe will really help improve our curriculum and improve the student experience that we have here. So I'd like to just give a couple of minutes to ask people, what did I miss? And I went over it pretty high, but what did I miss? Bob.
I thought it was a great summary, but I think that for us the real question
Oh,
is like,
here.
I thought it was a great summary that justice to themes, many of which I didn't hear because I was at the other side of the room. But I would say that one of the real fruitful points of engagement was how do you move forward? And what we said was much of the talk seems to be focused on bodies of knowledge. And even the technology talk suggests there's a better pipe by which you pass a bigger volume of knowledge at a higher rate of speed. But we said, look, we're a university, and the way we think of ourselves is as a repertoire of settings, that there are places where we engage learning in the format of streaming in a lecture. There are places in which it's a back and forth like Gwen Schusterman's work on deliberative democracy. There are places in which a presentation becomes a takeoff for a learning. Laboratories are a place where there's hands-on stuff. And one of the things that's problematic for me is not the fact that there's complexity, but that as somebody who wants to move forward, how can we take the complexity, find the places in which we put the highest value on maintaining them, and what kinds of technologies can be brought to bear? You know, like some schools use online learning and actually create a set of faces on the screen so you see them in live dialogue even though people are scattered all over the world. That's the Minerva model, which one of our former faculty is very involved with, Josh Faust. So, I mean, that's the deal. A lot of this stuff is at 30,000 feet, but we live on the ground. The real fruit of the conversation will be to figure out, like, what is it that for the kinds of students we have, or the kinds of disciplines we teach, or for the kinds of faculty we are oriented toward, you know, more lecture or more engagement, we need to find a set of experiences, and that's the magic word, in which education happens, you know, with a lot of emotional resonance, with a good deal of trust, which is not much talked about, and with, in the end, people having some conviction that they've come away changed. I mean, it's not just we change ourselves, but we convey the sense that people have learned something that's transformational in 4 years. That's the task for me. How do you turn all this talk into something that's more a reflective dialogue about what we do and what needs to be switched?
I just want to say, as I've been sitting here today going through all of this talk about these lofty ideals, one thing's come into my mind again and again, and that is that we have a new e-portfolio platform, and we are currently piloting it, but the e-portfolio in some ways for the 21st century can really be a vehicle through which I think students can do multimodal learning. They can synthesize knowledge across horizontally, as Sona was talking about. Sorry, I'm turning my back to you.
It's quite all right.
You know, I really think that if you're not involved in using ePortfolio in your program, you really should be, because at any rate in our program, which is the University Studies program, one of the things that we're really trying to implement now, and we've always been trying to do this, but really it's becoming more of a reality now, is this movement from lifelong learning through the ePortfolio, and so that they can take it with them as an artifact of this sort of journey of discovery that they've gone on, in which they have synthesized very different crossed, you know, disciplinary boundaries and had different adventures and experiences like study abroad or student leadership or something, and it's all interwoven into this narrative of who they've become. And along with that goes curating their digital identity and things like that. So I think that that's one tool that we have, and we just invested a lot in this new platform, and it's fantastic. It's still a little buggy, but it will be a great tool, and I hope that if your program is not currently using ePortfolios, that you will come to the Carnegie conversation and see how that might help you talk about some of these things like social justice or whatever in your program, along with whatever curriculum you are delivering. I really think that that's just occurred to me over and over again today, so I just wanted to say that.
Something that was implicit in what Sona said, and I know she heard it because she was at our table when we were talking about it, and Bob alluded to it. We all know that students today are different than we were when we went to college. The students at PSU are even more different than the average student. Our students are unique in many ways. And one of the ways on the ground level that we can affect change is getting to know who those people are and trying to figure out how best to serve their needs.
Richard in the back.
I'll just say it's been a very enlightening and thought-provoking day, and I want to give thanks to the people that I was talking with who took the questions very seriously and had very creative and thoughtful responses. And I guess I'd like to advocate that it's absolutely true that this world situation is different, students are different, it's a complex and changing world, but I'm a historian, and part of me wants to say that smart people have been thinking about these questions for hundreds or thousands of years. And I think we do know, in a sense, what it means to be educated. I think some of the things that our keynote speaker said, in a sense, that hasn't changed. Education is still about, I'm not sure that I can get your item is exactly correct, but it's about making the individual better, it's about making them better citizens, it's about empowering them, it's about empowering our students to be more effective advocates for themselves and for the world and for their communities. And I think that's what we can offer. We're not just offering training. I know our students, for absolutely good reasons, are concerned about getting that first job out of college. But I think we have to believe that what we're doing is education. yeah, we do know what that is, and I think it's a matter of being articulate about that to each other and to our students, and to sort of say, this is not just training for, you know, getting your first job. We hope you do, but it's about education that makes you that empowers you to be a better person and a better member of a world community.
Anyone else want to add anything? Well, as I mentioned at the very beginning, was there someone back there? Oh. As I mentioned in the very beginning of the day, this is not a single isolated conversation. And it's not like we just started this. We've had lots of conversations and lots of changes, very, very positive changes in the way that we think about how we deliver the curriculum and what we want our students to learn and what we want to learn from them and what we want to learn from each other. But this is not a single event, and it will be the case that the Faculty Senate and our office and other units on campus will continue this conversation. As Bob mentioned, you know, these things need to turn into actions. There's things that we need to do. You, not just you in this room, but you are going to define what those are as faculty and as staff. And I just found the conversations just wonderful and exciting. And I too will do the assignment that I gave all of you, and that is to take back to my unit some of the things that we learned here today and some of the things that we want to talk about and make some change. But I just ask that you don't let today go to waste. I don't think it was a wasteful day. I thought it was very productive. But don't let today go to waste by then just saying, oh, I went to an all-day symposium. Think about what it is that you're going to do, what you're going to get your colleagues to do, and to think about and talk about and take action on that you've learned or you've discovered today about us as a university, about our students, about your colleagues, or about yourself. And with that, I'd like to give my final thanks to Kevin Riley for making the trip from Wisconsin to here. So thank you. And now, President Vivell, it's 3:25. It's 3:30, okay. Anyway, there's food back there. There's a no-host bar, and thank you, everybody, for coming.